to understand this feature works, this one doesn't work. So you need to start building things people love. You have to start building things that actually solve problems in Africa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. I have been looking forward to today's episode with Darlington Anyagro, founder, CEO of Aladdin, connecting Africa through technology. And we're going to be diving in deep around the state of business in Africa, audiences, fundraising, everything Darlington's done to get to this point. I had the privilege of working with Darlington through the Expert Dojo accelerator here in Santa Monica and have been awaiting this discussion. So Darlington, thanks for taking the time to come onto the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Jason. Good evening or good morning or good afternoon, anywhere our audience. Thanks for having me, actually.
It is my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And generally like to start with background on the guest. Thought we'd begin with your story and lead to the creation of Aladdin from there.
Okay, so I studied mechanical engineering. So from the university, I read mechanical engineering. But I discovered early in my campus days that I had so much passion for banking. So when I finished school, I went straight into banking. So I worked in a couple of banks here in Africa. So for the last 14, 15 years, I was doing banking, but especially retail banking. So I was doing consumer loans, retail loans, designing savings and loan products in different banks. And then I got into fintech in 2018 when I was invited to become one of the directors of which later became a $2 billion unicorn, a fintech known as OPay. OPay is actually Opera Pay from the parent company Opera Network in Norway. So they began Opera payment in Africa. So they started OPay in Egypt, in Nigeria, and in Kenya. And I was one of the directors of OPay at the beginning. So that's where I actually dived into fintech. So we grew OPay. Today, OPay is a $2 billion unicorn. I was also one of the managing directors, the founding managing director for OCash, which is the loan app, the consumer loan app sister company to OPay. And then in 2020, just after COVID subsided, I and my friends, we chose to start Aladdin. So Aladdin was a cry. It was designed to meet the needs of SMEs, small businesses in Africa, because COVID pushed nothing less than 50, 60% of those small businesses online. Majorly, most of those businesses were offline before COVID. They were all selling in their mom and pop shops, and they were doing all their transactions offline. But because of COVID and the lockdowns, the global lockdowns, these businesses across Africa, we are forced to start selling on WhatsApp, Instagram, on Facebook, on Telegram, on Twitter. So we discovered that we needed to build a different type of bank for them, a bank that provided them with financial services and also gave them the tools to also sell their product and services. So that was the foundational drive for Aladdin. So Aladdin is a digital bank that has a marketplace, that has social network, and also has financial services to power SMEs across Africa. So that's when we started. So that's my foundation. So I have banking experience. I read in mechanical engineering. I've been part of a very successful fintech, OPay, a $2 billion unicorn. And I started Aladdin to actually address the issue of a new type of banking called, marketplace banking. So Aladdin is the pioneer of marketplace banking in Africa. So we brought marketplace and banking all in one app. And so we actually pioneered that in Africa in 2020. Yeah, that's a bit of my story. Yeah.
Amazing. So starting as mechanical engineering, moving into banking, retail banking, you get into fintech through OPay. They turn into a $2 billion unicorn. Sounds like you're overseeing Kenya at that point. And you saw the opportunity for SMEs, small businesses, to take offline businesses online during COVID 2020.
Exactly.
Everyone's disconnected, and you said, hey, we have better fintech solutions here in Kenya, larger areas of Africa, and put your focuses there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's correct. But actually, I was more focused in Nigeria. So I was in the Nigerian market, not the Kenyan market. So I was in the Nigerian market.
That's right.
We also touched base with the Kenyan market, but majorly the Nigerian market, which is actually the biggest market in Africa. Nigeria has a population of over 250 million people. That's the
Wow.
most populous Black country in the world. So we have millions of SMEs here. So it was a good place to start. So it was a good place to start Aladdin. So our Nigerian market is very big, and that's where we started Vision. It's exactly.
Now, still Nigeria only? Can we talk about, expansion, from there? Or is Nigeria, I mean, 250 million people, excellent opportunity. Is Nigeria where Aladdin is operating?
Okay, so Aladdin is a US company actually. So we're actually a US family and also
Sure.
registered in the UK. But we are focused on Africa. So Aladdin has actually pivoted from just, or let me say, not the word pivot, but really expanded from the Nigerian market. When we started in 2020, this is 2024. So we
Mhm.
we, we built a new type of product that actually caters for all Africa. So not just Nigeria now. So initially, you could only sign up on Aladdin if you are a Nigerian because of the license that we have. But now we have the opportunity to actually onboard people across Africa. So whether you're in Kenya, you're in Rwanda, you're in South Africa, you're in Egypt, you're in Ghana, wherever you are in Africa, we have built an ecosystem that can onboard you, validate your documentation, even if as a business or as an individual, and then bring you into the Aladdin ecosystem where you can now start doing cross-border payments. So we're moving into the space of cross-border payment, facilitating payment and trade across Africa and also within Africa and into Africa. So that's where so we've expanded our vision and our reach from just the Nigerian market in 2020. Now we're catering for the entire Africa and also Africans in diaspora. So that's what Aladdin is doing right now.
We talk a bit more about cross-border payments. I feel it's an issue in the United States that we're not particularly aware of. I remember learning more
Okay.
about it working in the world of cryptocurrency and digital assets and understanding that cross-border payments are easier for us in the US and it can be a real obstacle in different markets. Can you speak to some of the issues your customers, your businesses were having before using Aladdin?
Okay, so the cross-border payments in Africa is quite expensive. All right, the average cost of sending money from one African country to the next African country is about 15%.
Mm,
That's the how expensive it is. So even for between some borders like Tanzania and Uganda, you may not be familiar with them, but between those two corridors, the cost of sending money goes as high as 36%. So you can spend 36% as charge just to send money between these two countries in Africa. So, and the problem is that the process is slow. The process is actually fragmented, it's broken. There are too many regulations in different jurisdictions. You have regulations for West Africa, you have East African regulation, you have North Africa, you have Central Africa, and there are different regulations. Those actually hampers the flow of funds within Africa. Then the problem again is that most people are only confident to peg transactions with USD, US dollars. So
mm.
if you are doing transaction between two local currency, you have to peg that transaction against the US dollars. So that makes the transaction quite expensive because for everybody has to source for USD before they can convert one local currency to the next local currency. So it is quite difficult. So I mean, I experienced that when I'm traveling from Nigeria to Rwanda or to Kenya, I have to convert my money from the local currency to US dollars before I board my plane to the next country. So that was quite difficult. But now with Aladdin, you are able to convert from one local currency to the next currency, and that money gets to the destination in less than 1 minute. So in
Wow.
less than 1 minute, you get payment into, for example, from Aladdin app to M-Pesa in Kenya. You can get the alert in less than 1 minute, or you can get from Aladdin app to Momo in Rwanda into Momo wallet in less than 1 minute. And also, you don't need to bother about converting your naira, for example, in Nigeria to dollar before it becomes converted to Kenyan shillings. All right. So we do all those paperwork and all those liquidity transactions behind the scene. All we do is to make our customers happy with their transactions. It's faster, it's cheaper, less than 5%, unlike the traditional 15 to 36% that was happening before the Aladdin actually.
Over 15 to under 5, under 6. I remember going through some of these obstacles. I've been in Tanzania and working with businesses in Kenya and other locations, hearing about the transfers. Like you said, to go from one country to the next, you have to transfer to USD, then back. Obvious obstacles, and being able to do it in the matter of a few minutes. obviously huge. And talking about the marketplace, we were just looking into Nigeria with 250 million people, understanding how big the populations are in Rwanda, South Africa, Egypt, Ghana, many of the places that you're mentioning. Really sounds like a massive, massive next iteration of fintech for global investors, not just for with the small businesses, businesses as a whole in Africa. Uh, is anyone else doing this? I mean, it sounds like such a present uh, you know factor of doing business in Africa. Are there other companies, other fintechs that are looking to approach with their own initiatives?
Yeah, there are a couple of fintechs, but just that the majority of fintechs in the last 3 to 4 years have been more focused with remittance. They are more focused in building solutions that remit funds into Africa because the total remittance into Africa from diaspora in 2022 was about $144 billion. So
Wow.
$144 billion came into Africa just, 2 years ago. So most of the fintechs that you have already, there are so many of them, they've built solutions to allow Africans in diaspora to send money back home. They'll send back money back to Nigeria, send money back to your papa, your family back in Kenya. So that's been the focus. But cross-border payment within Africa itself has been quite neglected. All right. So, but we saw that Africa, what they call intra-African trade is becoming liberalized. More and more African countries, like the president of Kenya, have made visiting Kenya, for example, visa-free. You don't need visa to visit Kenya. You don't need visa to visit Rwanda. So we are seeing a Pan-African movement going on. So more and more Africans are opening their borders for transaction. They want to do more trade with other African countries. But the problem is payment. So if I want to do trade with somebody in Egypt today, I don't know how I'm going to pay the guy. There's no payment rail. So most of the fintechs have been focused on bringing funds into Africa. They have not been focused on making payments within Africa itself. So that is where Aladdin comes, and that is why we are different. And number two, most of the solutions we've had so far have been focused on the individual customer. So today we've built a solution, both web and mobile, for both individuals and businesses. So we are the first fintech that allows onboarding of businesses across Africa. So we are able to onboard, you do what they call KYB, onboard what they call and verify your ultimate beneficiary owners of your business, across Africa. So we have integrations to over 1,000 databases around the world, government databases, for us to validate your business, the name of your business, all the documentations of your business. So we are looking at Africa as a whole. So that's why we are different. So we're focused on not just bringing funds into Africa, we are focused on the second leg of that, making sure that the funds get to the destination within Africa. So that's why we're different. Yeah.
So other businesses see they have more of an interest in remittance into Africa, the 144 billion that you mentioned. Your solution is focused on businesses in Africa, and long term, the opportunity around that mobile solution. I understand more of the social network that you guys are building as well too, validating businesses, building trust among sellers across Africa. I think it's a great place to focus, and I want to talk about the magnitude a little bit. How many downloads have you guys had? How many users do you have? How many loans have you put out? What type of transaction volume are we talking about? Want to be able to paint the picture for listeners.
Okay, so I also want to make it sure that although, like I said, we are focused on transactions within Africa, it doesn't
Mhm.
mean that we also don't allow remittance into Africa or payment outside Africa. So we do the
Of
three levels. I'm not saying that we are doing both remittance into Africa, then transactions within Africa, and then transactions outside Africa. So, for example, you want to pay your child school fees, you want to pay hospital bills to UK, or you want to send money back to someone in Canada to pay your child school fees in Canada or something like that, we can still handle that through the Aladdin app. I just want to set that record straight. So it's not just within Africa alone, but I'm saying that we are one of the fintechs that actually paid more attention into solving that intra-African payment conundrum that have been available for years. We've had over, like, so far so good. We've had over 150,000 downloads of our app. Over 100,000 users have been using the app. But like I said, in the last 2 years plus, we have been more focused in the Nigerian market. So this cross-border stuff is a new area for Aladdin. So it's a new area that we're unveiling, and we have been seeing millions of dollars of transaction in value. For example, we've had over close to $500 million worth of transaction requests on our portal. And then we've been processing millions of dollars of transactions, and we're revenue positive. I mean, we've started generating revenue. Though it's coming in trickles, so far we've done revenue of over $350,000 so far on the app. But I mean, it's a new area, so but it's growing actually fast and growing very, very quickly for us. And that's why we know that there's a lot of potential here. So it's a billion-dollar industry. For example, Africa has 1.4 billion people. All right, with an average per capita income of over $2,000. So you have an average per capita income over $2,000 in Africa. You have over 1.4 billion people in Africa. So that tells you that the total addressable market, the sum is actually in billions of dollars. There's a lot of transaction that happens within Africa, and this has been manual for ages. These transactions have been cash-based. They have been very slow. And then we are tapping into that market right now, and we're giving them a solution for the first time to ensure that these transactions are seamless within Africa, actually.
The problem that you pointed out with 15, I know it's as high as 36% per transactions, and the currency, conversion, how it's pegged to USD. I know you mentioned the delays you guys are doing in a matter of minutes, and then to hear about that solution for the 1.4 billion people, $2,000, income. You're talking about, trillions are really at stake here, and being able to have that, multi-currency wallet, being able to have business accounts set up for African businesses, and the easeability of your platform, of course, with the marketplace, the social media, and the finance aspects. Being able to hear how that comes to life with the amount of users that you have, over 150,000, amount of loans, amount of transaction volume, you said over 500 million. And those are big numbers. Definitely gives us more of a perspective as we're looking at the opportunity, the market size, everything that's going on. Have you received a lot of third-party validation? I know you have taken on investments from Expert Dojo and Plug and Play, other notable institutional investors. But have you had local press, national, continental press? Have you been, do you guys have any partners or any third-party validation that's, spoken loudly about what Aladdin does? I imagine, you're integrated pretty well into the community with that amount of users.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, over the last 2 years plus, we've actually integrated with other players, other unicorns like Flutterwave. We have other big players like Stripe, the Nigerian Stripe or the African Stripe called a Paystack, because I mean, Paystack was purchased by Stripe for $200 million. So we are integrated to so many players. But our model, our business model, it has to do with partnerships. So what we do, because there's no how you can have license across all Africa. So every jurisdiction in Africa requires either a license or a letter of no objection from the central bank. All right. So what we have done so far is to integrate with different players across Africa to make this payment possible. All right. You have banks, you have telcos, we have intermediary players, So what we've done is that people that are integrated to, there's some people that have access to make payments in over 30 countries in Africa. So instead of reinventing the wheel, so what we do is to plug into their ecosystem to make that payment easier and cheaper for our own users. So we have a lot of validation because our system is integrated to so many players, even in the UK, some players in the UK that makes that payment possible from Africa, to the UK or to the United States. And we have all those integrations into our ecosystem so far. But like you said, we are not just focused on making payments, Jason. We are also connecting Africa. All right, you can see our mantra is connecting Africa through payments and technology. So on our system, everybody has a profile page where I can actually go on that platform and search for Jason. I will go to your page. Your page looks like your normal LinkedIn page, your normal Facebook page, or Instagram page. So that actually facilitates business and trade within Africa, because on your page, you can actually advertise your product, you can advertise your services. So whether you're in Rwanda and I'm in Nigeria, I can stumble on your page, I can search for you, I can communicate with you, I can chat with you on the platform, so we can talk business on the platform and then consummate the business through payments. So we're not just doing payments. So we have that vision of connecting Africa. So that's why we're quite different. And a lot of players are integrating with us because they see the vision that we have is beyond just payments, but also We are also talking about connecting Africa on one single ecosystem. And right now, we're in talks with we're in talks with Afreximbank. This Afreximbank is the bank in charge of import and export across Africa and all that. So we're in talks with their payment arm already. Well, we're talking about collaborating with them. To how they can actually adapt this app across Africa, because they facilitate payments within Africa and outside Africa. So, like I said, we have these integrations, connections, and collaborations going on. You have also mentioned Expert Dojo. We've gone through the accelerator. You mentioned Plug and Play. We also have investments from Daft Capital. We have investment from, Valon Cap. Valon Cap, it's owned by the owner of Sendbird. Or like Sendbird App is the founder of Sendbird. He invested about some $100,000 in us. So a couple of people have actually, even a lot of YC founders, about 5 or 6 YC founders have actually invested in Aladdin. The other YC founders in different, I can mention some of them who have founded YC startups, and they all invested in Aladdin. So that talks about valuation so far. Yeah.
As a investor, as a founder of a marketing agency who works on investor marketing campaigns, I've found that that's what stands out to audiences the most is, who else is invested, who else is talking about the company. Massive institutional investors. There's a saying in the venture capital world: everyone wants to be first to be second. Meaning, once deals are validated, they want to hop in and put funds in. So I just think that is such a highlight of the traction that you're getting. Another question I want to ask as a marketer: you guys have obviously been very successful at growing your user base, bringing businesses into the platform, have them connecting with other businesses, with users in Africa. What is the marketing plan? How have you been successful at marketing? And without any forward-looking statements, everything compliant, of course. How will you be marketing from here? What will growth look like? For Aladdin.
So far, so good. In the last 2.5 years or so, we've been using both online and offline strategies for our marketing. So the online strategy is usually the normal stuff: Google Play, Instagram, social media, to acquire customers. Once the product is good, and also we have a very strong referral network. So when the product is good, people refer their family and friends to use the product, all right? And sometimes we actually run campaigns to incentivize our users to also bring other people into the ecosystem. Now, going forward, what we want to do is to actually have partnerships in different African countries. So starting with the Nigerian community, because the Nigerians are actually nomads. They are actually nomads. There's a saying that says, if you go to any country and you don't find a Nigerian, please leave that country immediately, because Nigerians are everywhere. They are everywhere. So we have large Nigerian communities across Africa. So what we want to do, we want to leverage on those Nigerian communities, all right? Because some of them are students in different African countries. Some of them are hustlers. They're into business in different African countries. If you go to Morocco, they are there. I went to Kenya. In fact, the whole area was full of Nigerians in Kenya. But most African countries are afraid of Nigerians because they are so many. They're like Chinese. They're everywhere. So if you can leverage on those communities, so what we want to do is to have representatives in the Nigerian community in every African country, starting with the top 10, because we are marked the top 10 countries where there's a lot of cross-border transactions. I can tell you for free, South Africa leads when it comes to cross-border transactions. South Africa leads in terms of transaction value, in terms of transaction value. So we've seen the corridors where transactions happen. So we want to tap into those communities, then make them our representative to draw people into our ecosystem. And then, of course, the normal online advertising, marketing, social media marketing, SEO marketing, everything will be going on the app, but definitely we have to do some legwork, all right? Tapping into communities, tapping into associations for them to have early users across Africa. And that's what we're going to be doing also. Then also in the UK, there are a lot of Nigerians, a lot of Africans are in the UK. There are students in different universities in the UK. So the UK community is also, we have a lot of student bodies who are going to be tapping into, also in Canada also. So we have those mapped out in terms of strategy on how we can get users in Africans actually to embrace Aladdin around the world. So that's what we're going to be doing.
We've been very successful at it. The only way to measure is with numbers, and your numbers are going up and substantial at that. And hearing about the landscape with the amount of users in Nigeria alone that are potentials in years to come, let alone the other surrounding markets. And you keep adding more to that list. You mentioned Morocco. My mom's actually from Morocco. I'm learning more and more about where growth could occur. Again, don't want to make any forward-looking statements, but many business leaders, many thought leaders say Africa is the new world, the next opportunity. Where business is going to be centered in decades to come, and it sounds like you are at the forefront of that. With that, would love to ask you some questions about how you've been able to see this success and potentially, package some actionable insights for listeners in terms of things that they could apply towards their own model, whether the founder of a startup or mid-market business, whether they're a marketer at a larger organization, or whether they're an investor, a VC, working in venture capital, working in investment crowdfunding, maybe looking to apply to one of their portfolio companies, maybe just trying to get an understanding of where your lens, where your perspectives, where your day-to-day efforts have gone. In that regard, what should founders test for themselves? What's been effective in terms of what Aladdin has tested that has led to their growth?
Okay, so over the years, we've come to realize some products work while some don't work. So we have sometimes we build a lot of features, like Aladdin has a lot of features in our app. We have USD cards, we have anonymous pay, we have marketplace. So at the time, you need to understand this feature works, this one doesn't work. So you need to start building things people love. You have to start building things that actually solve problems in Africa. Africans don't have a lot of disposable income. They are not so much rich people in Africa. So they actually buy products that solve their immediate problem. So if you are doing business in the African continent, your products, the features you are launching that you're trying to push out there should solve immediate problems for Africa, should solve critical problems, all right? Not just giving them, good to have products or good to have features, but you have to test and make sure that what you are pushing out actually solves a critical problem. And then you're going to have a lot of users, because users will gravitate towards your product when it is solving very cogent problems for them. That is where a lot of founders fail. They do beautiful apps, good user interface, UI, UX, good experience, but it's not solving any problem. So I'm not going to spend a dime on your app. I'm not going to use your app. It's beautiful, quite all right, but it's not solving my problem as an African. So Africans are quite pragmatic when it comes to why they need this fintech or why they need this startup, all right? It must be solving something critical and maximizing the small or meager income that they make from whatever they are doing on a daily basis. So that's very critical. So when it comes to marketing, we try to keep our marketing spend, our CAC, customer acquisition cost, at least less than $2, $1. Try to keep the CAC as low as possible. For example, there's an investment winter right now. So many startups in Africa are struggling to get investment. That's just the honest truth. A lot of mergers and acquisitions are going on right now. One of the big fintechs in Nigeria just acquired another fintech yesterday, undisclosed amount. So that's been going on. So if you have limited resources, you don't want to spend your money on marketing strategies that are quite expensive and don't yield results. So you have to go for strategies that reduces your CAC and then make sure that your LTV, your lifetime value of your customers, actually makes sense compared to your CAC. So these are things you have to do. So Africa is not a market where you come to spend a whole lot of money on marketing. That doesn't make sense, all right? So pragmatic marketing, and some of them are not too literate. A lot of Africans are not too literate. So some of your social media posts may not be reaching the target market. So once you define your target market, you may discover that offline strategy may work better than online strategy. So there's a time when we had over 200 direct sales agents in Aladdin in 10 different states across Nigeria. So we tried that model and it worked. So those guys, they go into the market and they begin to acquire these customers, the business customers, because some of them are not used to fintech. They are used to commercial banks. They are used to the old system. So you need to handhold them, some of them, to onboard them into this fintech ecosystem. So we had over 200 direct sales agents there, and it was very, very, very affordable. Because, for example, we pay them less than $1 for every customer they acquire. And they ensure that the customer completes their KYC, the customer is validated, the customer does their first transaction. But you can't get that from social media. If they spend money on Google Ads will only ensure the app is downloaded, but the Google Ads will not ensure the guy actually signs up and the guy actually, does his KYC and so. But nobody does that for you. But the offline strategy ensures that they go the extra mile of onboarding the customer, of teaching the customer. So you have to look at the mix, the online mix and the offline mix, and look at the target market and find out what works for you. That's just my little advice to founders, marketers in this space, actually.
You're speaking my language. That's what my conversations look like on a day-to-day basis. With the customer acquisition cost, $2 is amazing, by the way. And being able to have the focus on the lifetime value with different geo targets and where you're growing towards, your breakdowns of the target market and understanding of the media that they consume with offline. And I know in many markets, offline can be stronger than online.
Yeah.
Being able to see what's working, optimizing towards it, being able to scale. It's obviously what the podcast is all about. That was a thorough breakdown beyond what most founders share on here, I may add. It's a very clear understanding of your positioning in the space and your user base, which you've already mentioned. You have more of a focus on the user base than other fintechs who are just looking to remit into Africa. What about optimization? What about if things aren't working right out of the gate? You launch a new marketing plan, you launch a new product feature, maybe something in social media, and it's not getting the traction that was projected. What are the best approaches towards optimization?
So, like I said, I learned something from my days in OPay. OPay is actually owned by the Chinese. The founder of OPay is actually a Chinese man. At some point, we launched over 10 million startups under OPay. In 2019, we launched so many products under OPay. Do you know what? In less than 24 months, we closed down 90% of those startups. There were with over 5,000 employees. So I learned something quickly. If it's not working, don't spend money on it. So you launch fast, you iterate fast, you test. If it's not working, don't spend money trying to optimize. It's not working. Just close that. So we launched so many things. I can tell you, like ORide, which was the ride-hailing system under OPay. We shut it down. We have OFood, which was aggregating restaurants under the OPay system. It wasn't working out. We shut it down. I learned something about you launch, you test, you iterate, and then if it's not working, it's not working. Don't waste your time. Shut it down and go to the next big idea. But if you can see signs of growth, then you can now think about what is the best strategy to optimize this. So don't waste your time in something that doesn't work. If it works, trust me, in my own market, the African market, if it works, these guys are going to come to your product in droves. They're going to come to they want value for their money. So if it's not working, it's either they're not aware of the product or, bro, you have to just shut down that product and move to the next one. But if it's working, there are better ways to optimize. Optimizing means what is working? What's the best strategy for customer acquisition? Like, how do I reduce cost? Are there better ways to actually position this product, to serve more people, maybe to serving a subsector of the economy. But if I can actually add this feature, then it may serve a broader, spectrum of the economy. So these are conversations you need to have with your product team and also with the marketing team and the data team, and then gather data. The data speaks for itself. So I have a data team that looks at that, draws the data from the database. You can see transactions, you can play around with data. The data speaks for itself. If there's no usage, if the usage is dropping per time for that particular product, you ask yourself if there's a way it can be remedied or you have to shut it down. So there are no sentiments. There's no sentiment in business. If it's not working, shut it down. If it's working, you can see some glimmer of hope, then find better ways to actually optimize it and get a larger share of the market. Yeah.
And how do you come up with these new ideas? Like you said, it's not working, shut it down. Obviously, if you're running evergreen, if you're running marketing or features that have been historically producing, can focus back there. But how are you coming up with the new concepts? I find that's a big differentiator from one brand to the next.
So I don't know. What I was saying that I'm always abreast with what is happening in the space. All right. I'm always abreast. I will tell you for you. I'm subscribed to a lot of blogs. I get a lot of information. From everywhere. What is going on in the space? What are the pain points? A lot of research. We do a lot of research to find out what are the particular pain points for Africans right now. And when you travel, you also see firsthand what struggles people are actually facing, the struggles they are facing. that will also help you to actually design products around the struggles. And Africa is a lot of places are quite underdeveloped. So these are massive opportunities. So every struggle of the African continent is a massive opportunity actually to actually build something great and something awesome. So I mean, those struggles allow me to think. I can think outside the box because I know that these guys are struggling with this particular area, that area, and then it mustn't be fintech. It can be any area. It can be logistics. All right. It can also be logistics. It can be so much. It can be healthcare. It can be agri-tech. For example, the total fund that came into Africa in January was about $83 million, quite small compared to last 2023, about over $500 million came into Africa in January 2023. But now it dropped to $83 million in January. But guess what? The top 3 deals in January was agri-tech, clean tech, and health tech. Agri-tech, clean tech, and health tech. No fintech. So most of the funds are going to other areas because the Africa needs help in terms of health. There are not a lot of health solutions or health startups in Africa. In terms of clean tech, cleaning the environment, there are very few clean tech startups in Africa. Then agriculture, food. We have 1.4 billion people to feed. So we need technology. So you get my point. So these are critical issues that would start. If you're a founder and you're an entrepreneur, these are areas beyond fintech. These are areas you can start thinking about. For example, now we're trying to open up intra-African trade, but logistics is a nightmare. How do you move products from Rwanda to Nigeria? How do you move products from Egypt to South Africa? Logistics is a nightmare. We have a lot of what they call it, terrorist attack. All right. If you go by road, if you go by rail, the rail system, is it working? Is it intercontinental? If you go by ship, if you go by flight, now with the dollar transactions, what they call the airfare is quite expensive. So how do you move these goods by cargo via air to other African countries? So logistics is also a very big nightmare. So there are so many problems to solve in Africa. So beyond Africa, so for me, the problem that we see actually inspires me. Every problem is an opportunity to build an awesome product. That's how I say it. Thank you.
I 100% agree. And hearing more about the details just brings it more to life for me. And it's troubling to hear, ag tech, health tech, clean tech, all great verticals, but to hear fintech's not included in that list. I've done. Hey, Darlington, I was broken off there for a second, but we're still recording. I'm going to be able to have my team edit that out. But as I was mentioning, to hear about the $83 million, ag tech, health tech, clean tech, all great verticals. But the fact that fintech is not included in there. I mean, I've been doing conferences all over the world. I recall being at the World Congress of Angel Investors Forum, Istanbul, other conferences in Europe, and there were representatives from Nigeria, from other areas of Africa, talking about the struggles around fintech and the opportunities. It's fantastic to hear your positioning and how you've had the focus on the small businesses and how that's led to massive growth from downloads and user base across the board. What are tips? What are examples towards scale that you could provide founders? What are the best approaches towards scale to wrap up the test optimize scale questions?
Okay, for me, like I said, once you understand what is working, it's quite easy to scale. But you have to, like I said, scaling has to be methodical and strategic. All right. For example, we have over 50 countries in Africa. We cannot actually, move into all African countries at the same time. So what we simply do is, first of all, look for the top 3 countries where we have a lot of transaction, where we have a lot of interest. So there's a way you can actually work with locals to gauge the interest for your product in those countries. Then you look at those countries, and then we begin to optimize with the first top 3 countries, then move to the next 7 or 8 or 10, and before we talk about spreading across Africa. So while you are trying to scale, you also have to be very, very methodical and strategic in your scaling. You have to understand, go from the low-hanging fruits, then before you become very bullish, to say you want to spread. But being bullish means you need a lot of capital sometimes to actually spread, unless you have a very phenomenal product like a ChatGPT that grew to 100 million users in less than a few weeks. But if you're not a ChatGPT, you actually need to move your product. So you have to be very strategic and methodical how you spend investors' money in your bid to scale. And in scaling, like I said, there's offline, there's online. Also have to look at the mix, your marketing mix to understand what works for you. Sometimes you also have to spend some money in awareness first, because awareness builds trust, especially in fintech. If you don't build awareness and people are not aware of your product, they can't keep their funds in your wallet. They can't keep your funds in your system, because they need to trust your brand. They must trust your brand to say, okay, this brand is big enough, and this brand is is trustworthy enough to have my funds. So brand awareness, using social media, using above the line advertising to some extent, maybe for a short period of time, can actually help to solidify your mind share, and also create trust for your product before you become very bullish with other strategies on how you can expand. These are some of my thoughts around scaling. So scale method, there should be strategy around scaling. Test, go to the low hanging fruits first before you become very bullish as to how you want to move to other markets.
Darlington, you've given us a valuable education today on business in Africa, let alone your notes, your insights on Aladdin and how it is primed for growth. I'd like to open up communication with you and listeners, viewers. What is the best way for them to get in contact with you? And what are any final thoughts that you
Okay,
want to
so
leave listeners and viewers
one of the
with
best
today?
ways you can get to reach me is through my email, darlington@aladdin.ng. I'm sure at the end of the podcast, maybe Jason and your team are going to put out some of my emails for viewers to see, I hope. And then we are also running a campaign on WeFunder right now. Like I said, we had set approval. We're doing crowdfunding, regulatory CF crowdfunding right now on WeFunder.com. So you can go and check us out on wefunder.com/Aladdin. Aladdin is spelled ALADDIN, but sometimes people spell Aladdin with one D or one L. So ALADDIN. So wefunder.com/Aladdin. That's our page. You can see our traction, our team, everything about Aladdin, and you can invest with a minimum of $300. If you believe in what we are doing, we're connecting Africa through payments, both Africans within Africa and Africans in diaspora. So we're connecting them through payments and technology. So, we're also calling on investors wherever you are in the world. You can be, part of what we are doing with a minimum of $300 on the Aladdin WeFunder page. You can actually invest, into Aladdin and become a shareholder in Aladdin. But my emails are going to be put there, darlington@aladdin.ng. My personal email is celebritybanker@gmail.com. And I hope my phone number can be there. So I'm very, very reachable. On Twitter, I'm also on Twitter at Dalo22. I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn. So search for Darlington Onyagoro on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn page is there. I'm very active LinkedIn member of the community, of the LinkedIn community. So I'm also on LinkedIn, Darlington Onyagoro, or Aladdin. Aladdin's page is also on LinkedIn. So these are all ways you can actually get to reach me, especially on LinkedIn. You can just chat me up, and then we can have a conversation from there. Thank you so much.
A lot of great locations to get in touch with Darlington there. And as you mentioned, WeFunder, you can actually ask questions and see other reviews from investors on the WeFunder platform, which is excellent to learn more about the investment opportunity. But Darlington, I want to take the time to thank you for coming on to the podcast today. You've given us a unique perspective on digital banks in Africa and around the marketplace, social media, the fintech, the history, some of the competitors. I have a much more firm grasp on the problem and solution that Aladdin is solving, even with the opportunity to work with you in the past firsthand and having seen your content online. So really appreciate it. I know listeners, viewers are going to as well. So thank you again.